What's up, everybody? Welcome to Jumpwave. Today we're going to be doing a cover of Blue Monday by New Order on the Korg Volca Sample 2 using only the factory samples. Blue Monday is an alternative dance classic and it is the best-selling 12-inch single of all time. It's also a personal favorite of mine and a song that I've been wanting to try on the Volca for a long time. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's get started. So the song has a tempo of 130 beats per minute. Let's go ahead and set our tempo on the Volca. Now the first thing we're going to do is clear our pattern by holding down Function and selecting Step 16, All. Now we're ready to set up our samples. All right, on part 1, we're going to have sample 000, kick thick. On part 2, we're going to have sample 24, snare thick. On part 3, we're going to have sample 54, open hat loud. On part 4, we're going to have sample 32, clap machine. On part 5, we're going to have sample 127, bass UnisonSyn. On part 6, we're going to have sample 126, bass FilterSyn. On part 7, we're going to have sample 119, minor choir. And on parts 8 and 9, we're going to have sample 120, Dyna strings. Now that we have our sample set up, let's begin programming our pattern. So we're going to start with the drums. Let's go over to part 1. Let's go to step mode. And we're going to put kicks on steps 1, 5, and 9 through 16. Let's shorten that decay up a little bit to about 50. We're going to tighten that kick up. So that drum pattern is already familiar. We already know where this is going. All right. So let's go over to part 2 now. We're going to put a snare on parts 5 and 13. Now over to part 3. We're going to put a hi-hat on 3, 7, 11, and 15. We're going to put the decay down to 25 for that hi-hat. And let's do a little high cut here, about 120, just to take some of those highs off the hi-hat there. All right, part 4 now, we're going to put a clap on steps 5 and 13, just doubling up that snare. All right, cool. Now let's go over to part 5. And on part 5, we're going to do bass notes here. So we're going to put a bass note on steps 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. So every step except 2, 6, 10, and 14. But if we hit play, you can hear our sample is being triggered on each step, but it's only playing one note, and we want this bass line to play different notes. So how do we do that? Well, we can change the note values per step by holding down the step and then press and holding down Function, taking our finger off the step, and then turning the speed knob, which will change the note value. It will adjust the pitch of that sample by semitones. So our bass sample is a C note. So each note value is going to be one semitone starting from C. So starting at C, 1's going to be C sharp, 2 will be D, 3 will be D sharp, so on and so forth. We can also go into the negative with that. So if C is our starting point, -1's going to be B, -2 is going to be B flat, -3 is going to be A, so on and so forth. This goes 24 note values in both directions, giving us a 4-octave range to play with. So let's change these notes. Steps 1 and 5 are going to be a low F. So we're going to press and hold these 2 steps. So you can do more than one step at a time. So we're going to press and hold 1 and 5. While continuing to hold those down, we're going to press and hold Function. We're going to take our finger off the step. And then we're going to take our other free hand now, and we're going to turn the speed knob to -7. And that will change steps 1 and 5 now to an F. So you can hear how it's different now. It's playing different notes now. Cool. So steps 3 and 4 and 7 and 8 are going to be a high F. So this is like an octave bass here. So low F, high F, high F, low F, high F, high F. All right. So 3, 4, 7, and 8 are going to be high F. So that's +5. So we're going to hold down 3 and 4 and turn the speed knob to +5 now. And we're going to do the same thing for 7 and 8. Cool. Now steps 9 and 13 are going to be a low C, -12. So we can hold down 9 and 13, press and hold Function, take our fingers off the steps now, and we're going to turn this now to -12. All right. Now, steps 11, 12, 15, and 16 are going to be middle C or 0. So you don't really have to do anything. You can leave it as it is. But personally, me, I like to lock it in at 0 just in case this knob turns. You don't want to end up playing the wrong notes here because you hit the wrong knob or something like that. You want to lock in these note values. So we're going to press and hold down 11 and 12 and turn the speed knob to 0. And the same thing for 15 and 16. Just wiggle it, put it back on 0. All right, let's listen. So let's tighten that bass up. We're going to give it a sharper attack by turning the start point up to 10. And we're going to shorten the decay now to about 50. All right, now over to part 6. In the original track, there's like this filtered synth line that starts to come in during the intro. So we're going to work on that here. So we're going to put notes on steps 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. So same thing as last time. Every step except steps 2, 6, 10, and 14. All right, so let's change these notes now. So steps 1, 3, 4, and 5 are all going to be really high F, positive 17. So we're going to go 1, 3, 4, and 5. And we're going to turn this now to positive 17. And steps 7 and 8 are going to be high G, positive 19. Now steps 9, 11, 12, and 13 are going to be high C, positive 12. And steps 15 and 16 are going to be high D, positive 14. So let's listen to that real quick. All right, sounds good. But in the original recording, there's like some filtering going on with this synth part, and there may be like some delay working to add a little bit of rhythm to it. So the Volca sample is kind of limited in that regard. There's not a whole lot of like onboard effects here that we can really do to like add like modulation and filtering and stuff like that. So we kind of have to get creative. So what we're going to do to try to get that sound is we're going to turn the attack of the amp up to 25. And we're going to turn the decay down to 50. And instead of using the onboard delay, we're going to just automate the volume to kind of give it a little bit of groove. So steps 4 and 8, we're going to hold those steps down. Instead of holding function, we can just turn any of these knobs now, and it will lock in those changes. So the note value is a secondary function. Okay, so all these other ones that have labels are primary functions. So you don't have to hold down function to do any of these to lock in these changes. You can just hold down the step and then turn the knob. So let's do that for 4 and 8. We're going to turn the volume or level now down to 60 for those two. And then for 12 and 16, we're going to do the same thing. So that's locked in. Let's make sure we turn it back up now for the rest of them. And on steps 1, 5, 9, and 13, so basically the downbeats, we are going to turn the start point up now and give these a little bit of a sharper attack. So turn the start point to 25 for those. And let's turn it back down for the rest of them so we're not confusing it here. So let's give it a listen. All right, cool. Sounds close enough. I don't really think it's possible to like nail that part on the Volca. This is the best I could come up with, but if you have a better idea, let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn how you would have done it. All right, cool. So we don't need to do anything else for this pattern. We're going to go ahead and save it. So we can save a pattern by holding down function and selecting memory. And now it's going to give us the option to save this on any of these 16 memory parts here. So we're going to save it onto memory 1. We're going to save it also onto memory 2. We're also going to save it onto memory 3. We're also going to save it onto memory 5. So that first sequence, we're going to save it onto memory 1, 2, 3, and 5. Now let's load back up memory 2. So memory 2 is very similar to memory 1 with the exception of a few changes in the drums and bass. So the drums basically stay the same except for the kick pattern. So let's go over to part 1 and we are going to turn off steps 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16. So it's just basic on the downbeat 1, 5, 9, and 13 for that kick pattern now. Now let's go over to part 5 for our bass part. So these are all going to be D notes, but we're still playing that octave bass here. So steps 1, 5, 9, and 13 are going to be low D, -10. So let's go to 1 and 5, and we're going to turn those now down to -10. And 9 and 13 also -10. Now, the rest of them, 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, 12, 15, and 16 are all going to be high D, +2. So press and hold the step, press and hold down function, take your finger off the step, turn the speed knob to +2. All right, and everything else stays the same here. That synth part stays the same. It sounds like it should change, but if you listen closely in the original recording, it doesn't change. It plays throughout. It stays the same. So we're gonna keep it the same here. So let's go ahead and let's listen to our changes now. Cool, sounds good. Let's save it now onto memory 2. And let's also save it onto memory 4. And let's also save it onto memory 6. And let's also save it onto memory 8. All right, let's load back up memory 3 now. And everything in this sequence is basically the same except for there's a slight change to the bass part. So let's go, we're here on the bass part on part 5. So the C notes from step 9 through 16 are fine. We don't need to change those. We just need to change these F notes on steps 1 through 8 to G notes. So instead of playing F octaves, we're going to play G octaves here. So steps 1 and 5 are going to be low G, -5. And steps 3, 4, 7, and 8 are going to be high G, +7. All right, let's listen. Cool. We're done with that now. So let's go ahead. Let's save this now onto memory 3. And let's also save it onto memory 7. Cool. So the patterns on memory 1 through 4 are the intro to the song. So this is the part before the bass simplifies and then that synth part drops out and the other parts start to come in. So we're going to listen to parts 1 through 4 all together. And to do that, we are going to use the pattern chaining feature. So the Volca Sample 2 has pattern chaining, which is basically you press memory like you're going to load a pattern, and you press the first pattern you would like to load, and then you, while continuing to hold that first one down, you press the last pattern and all those patterns between them will be chained together. So I press 1, hold it down, and I press 4. And now you can see patterns 1 through 4 are chained together. That's what our screen is telling us here, 0, 1, 0, 4. So if I press play, we're going to hear pattern 1 play, then pattern 2, then pattern 3, then pattern 4, and it's going to go back to 1. So let's listen. Cool, sounds good. So now we can move on to the next section of the song, and that's patterns 5 through 8. So patterns on memory 5 through 8 are basically the same, except the bass is missing some notes here. So we're going to load up pattern 5 now. We're going to go to our bass part, go to step mode. And what we're going to do is we are going to turn off steps 4, 8, 12, and 16. So the rest of the bass stays the same, but instead of those extra notes now it's a much more streamlined, much more simplified bass line. All right. So let's hear how that sounds now. All right, cool. Now let's go over to part 6 now, and we're going to turn off this part here because this section of the song doesn't have this synth part. All right. And we are also, one more thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the kick pattern on part 1, and we're going to simplify this also. So we're just going back to 1, 5, 9, and 13 for our kick pattern. All right. So let's listen to it now. Cool. Sounds good. That's it. Let's save it now onto memory 5. And let's also save it onto memory 9. So let's load up memory 6. And the same thing, we're going to go to our bass on part 5. We're going to turn off 4, 8, 12, 16. And then we're going to go over to our synth part, and we are going to turn that off on part 6. And let's listen. Sounds good. Now let's save it onto memory 6, and let's save it onto memory 10. All right, let's load up memory 7 now. And same thing here. We're going to turn off all these notes here on part 6. We're going to go over to part 5. We're going to turn off 4, 8, 12, and 16. And then over to our bass on part 1, or excuse me, our kick on part 1. We're going to simplify that kick pattern to just 1, 5, 9, and 13. All right, let's listen to it. Sounds good. Let's save that one now onto memory 7. And let's also save it onto memory 11. And lastly, let's load up memory 8. And we're going to go over to part 5. Turn off 4, 8, 12, and 16. Go over to part 6 and turn all these off. Let's listen. Cool. Let's save it now onto memory 8. And let's save it onto memory 12. All right, so let's listen to patterns 5 through 8 together. So you can think of this as like kind of like the verse section, I guess, of the song. This is like where the vocals would come in and the singing would come in. So let's listen to 5 through 8 together and see, let's hear how that sounds. So hold down memory, press memory 5 while continuing to hold down memory 5, press 8. And now our screen's telling us 5 through 8 are chained together. So let's hit play and listen. Cool. All right. Now we're going to work on parts 9 through 12. So we're going to go and load up memory 9. And the bass and drums on memory 9 through 12 are the same as 5 through 8. that doesn't change, but this is the section of the song where the choir and the strings parts start to come in. So a little bit more melodic parts in this section here. So we're going to go over to part 7. And in the original track, New Order also used a sample. They used a sample from a Kraftwerk song, actually, the song Uranium by Kraftwerk. They used that kind of choir sound from that song. So if you want to go and grab that actual sample and throw it into your Volca sample to get the more authentic sound, by all means, go ahead. But I like to challenge myself to only use the factory samples. So what came in the box. I've never loaded samples on this thing. I've only used it the way it came from Korg. So that's just me. That's just the way I like to work with this device, but you do you. So let's go to step mode, and we're going to put a note on step 1, and it's a low F note. So we're going to turn the note value for step 1 down to -7. And we're going to do a high cut of 110. And we're going to adjust the start time to 3. So it's just got kind of like a soft attack, and we just want to just make it a little bit sharper here. Now let's go over to part 8. This is one of our strings parts. So we're going to put a low E -20 on step 1. And a low F -19 on step 15. We're also going to do a high cut of 110 here. Now let's go over to part 9 for our second strings part. And we're going to put a high C +12 on step 1. And on step 5, we're going to put a high B +11. On step 9, we're going to do a high A +9. And on step 13, we're going to do a high F +5. We'll also do a high cut here of 110. One more thing, we're going to turn the reverb on for parts 7, 8, and 9. So to turn the reverb on, you press and hold function, then press reverb. Now the screen says reverb, and we're going to turn the reverb on just for 7, 8, and 9. We're going to leave the rest of those parts to have a more dry sound. And we're going to set the reverb mix at 80. All right, and let's listen to how all that sounds. Cool, sounds good. Let's save it onto memory 9 now. All right, let's load up memory 10 now. And back to part 7. So same thing, we're going to put a low F -7 on step 1. Another high cut, 110. Over to, oh yeah, the start time. We need to adjust the start time to 3. And let's go over to part 8 now. We're going to put a low A -15 just on step 13. So go to step 13. We're going to do low A -15 there. Also high cut 110. And over to part 9 now. We're going to do an A +9 on step 13. And we need to turn the reverb again on here. So turn the reverb on for parts 7, 8, and 9. Oh, and we also need to do a high cut here. All right, let's listen. Cool. Let's save that now onto memory 10. And let's also save it onto memory 12. Now let's load up memory 11. And on part 7, same thing. Low F, -7 on part 1. High cut 110. Over to part 8. Oh, yeah, the start time, sorry. Adjust the start time to 3 for part 7. Now over to part 8. We're going to put a low E -20 on step 1. And we're going to do a low D -22 on step 15. Another high cut at 110. Now let's go over to part 9 for our second strings part. And we're going to put a high C +12 on step 1. And on step 5, we're going to do high B +11. On step 9, we'll do high A +9. And on steps 13 and 15, we're going to do a really high E +16. We'll do a high cut of 110. And we need to turn the reverb on again. All right, let's listen. Cool. Let's save it on to memory 11. So now let's chain the patterns on memory 9 through 12 together and listen to them all together. So memory, we're going to load up 9. While holding that down, press 12. Now the screen's telling us 9 through 12 are chained together. Let's hit play and listen. Sounds great. Now you may be saying, hey, what about all those awesome fills in the song? Well, that's the last thing we're going to do. So we're going to create what I call the fill patterns now. So we're going to load up memory 12 and we're going to save it onto memory 13. Now this pattern is just drums here. So let's actually mute everything except parts 1 through 4. So we're going to go to mute and we're going to turn off 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So just 1 through 4 for this pattern here on 13. So let's go over to part 1, go to step mode, and we're going to put a kick on steps 1, 4, 7, and 10. And now we're going to go over to part 3, and we're going to put a hi-hat on steps 1, 4, 7, and 10. And we're going to actually turn off the snare and the clap too on parts 2 and 4. So let's listen to it together. Turn off that one. And let's open that up a little bit. So now you want these cymbals to be like kind of choked sounding. So we're going to adjust the sample length to just kind of like cut them off. All right. So in the original song, that pattern repeats twice as part of the fill. So it'll go, and then it'll go back to the next section after that. So, all right, that sounds pretty good. So let's save it onto memory 13. And let's go to memory 5 now. Let's load up memory 5 just because it has most of what we need here already. And let's save it onto memory 14. And let's go to memory 6 now because it has most of what we need. And let's save it onto memory 15. So the patterns on memory 14 and 15 are going to be that big snare roll fill that's so memorable in the song. So let's go ahead and let's load up memory 14. And we're going to leave everything the same here, except we're going to go over to part 2. This is our snare part. And we're going to turn on all the steps except for 6, 8, and 14. So all the other steps should be on except for 6, 8, and 14. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. And we're also going to go over to part 3, and we're going to turn the hats off. All right, let's listen to it. Cool, sounds good. Let's save it onto memory 14. And let's load up memory 15 now. So we can turn these hats off on part 3. Let's go over to part 2. And we're going to put a snare on steps 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13. Let's go over to part 3. And we're going to turn off these. And we're going to turn on steps 13 and 15. We're going to open up the decay here a little bit. And we're going to make step 15, just step 15, sound like it's being choked like we did before with that other fill. So we're going to hold down step 15. And we're going to turn the length down to 45. And lastly, on part 4, we're going to add an extra clap on step 11. And let's listen. Tighten up that length on step 15. Tighten that up a little bit more. Put it at about 30 for that sample length there. Cool. All right, let's save it onto memory 15 now. And let's listen to patterns 14 and 15 together. So hold down memory, select 14 and then 15. And now we can see 14 and 15 are chained together. All right, sounds good. And that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of the song. Let's talk about how to play it all now. So what we really have here is 3 sections on the Volca. So memory 1 through 4 is one section. We can call that the A section. And then memory 5 through 8, that's the B section. And then memory 9 through 12, that's a third section. We'll call that the C section. And then we have our 2 fills on memory 13. That's fill A or fill 1. And then we have fill 2, which is memory 14 and 15. So the song starts with that kick drum pattern, and then that filtered synth part is gradually brought in until all the instruments come in. And then that's the full A section there. So the A section plays through a couple times. Then fill 1 plays through twice, which takes us then to the B section. And during the B section, that's when that bass guitar part comes in, which we're not going to do here. But if you have a bass guitar at home, you can recreate it for yourself. Let me know how that goes. And then after that, we have fill 2 comes in, which brings us to the C section. And that's when all the strings and the synths come in, which then takes us back to the B section. And that's when the vocals come into the song. So the song itself is quite long. Like I said, there's a lot going on, little variations and fills throughout. My humble little version on the Volca could never do it justice, but it's always a fun exercise nonetheless. So just listen to the original to get a feel for how it should sound and just have fun with it. And that's it. That's Blue Monday on the Korg Volca Sample 2 using only the factory samples. Let me know in the comments what you thought. What did I miss? Which samples would you have used instead? What other songs would you like to hear me cover on the Volca? And as always, if you like this video. And if you dig what I'm doing on this channel, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.